print that page. Right, sorry. Print anything off because I thought I was going to. Right. Okay, welcome everybody to the Energy and Sustainability Working Party, Tuesday the 8th of February, and this is, because it's a working party, any decisions are only recommended to full council if there are any. Excuse my printer going. Apologies for absence, please.
We have apologies from Councillor Mayor Liz Smith.
Okay, item 3, declarations of interest.
Unreceived.
No, okay. Bear with. Minutes of the previous meeting held on the 2nd of November.
Do you want me to share that?
Yes, please. I did find one. I thought I found one error anyway.
Cool. Here comes the chair.
Oh, is he? Oh, okay.
I'll just hang on sharing the screen, please. All right.
Yeah, okay.
I found a tiny error, which was just, it's not that important, but you said that I left the meeting at 8:42, and I think you meant 6:42 because it makes it sound like I was a bit odd and I just stayed in on my own for an extra sort of
right,
hour
we'll
and
correct
40
that.
minutes.
The meeting went on for ages. No, that was the error I found.
Yeah, I think the one is probably missing off it, I should imagine.
Yeah.
Right, where's Tony? Are you here?
He is. Hooray!
I am now,
Hey!
yeah. Sorry about that.
Right,
a little bit of a rush.
We're just about to start minutes of the previous meeting, Tony.
Oh, well done. Thank
Item
you.
number 4.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Colin, could you get up and then Tony can take it over?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, page. I haven't got the page number there.
Sorry, Tony, we haven't had any proposer seconded, by the way.
Oh, sorry. I thought you'd done
Right,
it. Yeah.
no, it didn't go that
Can I
far.
get a closer and a seconder, please? To accept those minutes.
Can't see.
That's John, the propose.
No, that was Laura
Seconder.
proposed. Laura proposed, I seconded.
Oh, sorry, Laura. Yeah. Okay, Laura proposed. John second.
Do you think
Show of
Paul
hands,
played mode?
please.
Yeah, sorry. I can't. All right.
Okay, thank you. Okay, page 27.
Chair, they just picked up that the one was missing from the 1842.
Under present, where it says Councillor L. Miller-Jones left the meeting at 8:42. I didn't stay in on my own for an extra hour and a half.
Yeah, okay. We can
So
change
we'll
that.
correct that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Anything else on page 27? No, page 28. Page 29. Sorry.
So,
Sorry,
Tony,
John.
sorry, I've got a light in my eye. Sorry, just going back to 28, the County Council passenger transport. Have we heard any more from that? Any results or anything?
Not a thing.
No, I didn't think so.
If you, Alicia, can you do a note for me to chase that, please?
I've not seen anything online or anything. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Page 29. Okay. Colin? Is that a residual hand that you had up there, or?
Pardon?
Yeah. All right. Okay. You had a hand. It looked like you had a hand up there.
Oh.
No. Okay. Right, okie doke.
The hand of God.
Yeah, the hand of God. No, it was one of
My
those.
own in there. I hope there wasn't another hand up there.
No, it's one of those little cartoon hands.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yeah. Okay. Actions. Item 5. Actions. A follow-up with professionals and WSDC regarding installation of solar panels to HTC buildings. That's Gary.
I see he's having problem. Looks like he's having problem connecting to audio.
Yeah, I've got it on my phone, fine. I'm just trying to close the laptop because the laptop keeps crashing.
Okay. Well, should we go on to item B and then hopefully?
Okay.
Yeah. That's
not going to buy him very much time, to be perfectly honest.
All right.
I'm just going to turn the laptop off.
All right. Okay. Well, would you like to do that anyway, Colin?
Well, it's closed to visitors as far as I know. It's not. I don't think it's reopened yet.
Okay. What's that one? Right. We'll move on to public forum and go back if there is any members of the public.
There's no members of the public here.
I don't think so. And the next item 7, is Gary again. So
I think Gary's ready now in respect to the solar panels.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so previously I'd obviously contacted a number of companies vis-a-vis taking quotes, which we got a number of quotes for. They're still coming back to me with interest. Obviously, I think further from advice from council members that there was a West Suffolk scheme that I was made aware of. So I've been in contact with West Suffolk Council about a scheme that they're running called West Suffolk Solar for Business. So what I got is the information from them regards whether we could install go through that scheme at the zone. So I've got a little bit of information from them on it. It's a very similar PV system as the other two systems, all three generating around about 22,000 kilowatts per year. And the key thing about this particular scheme is that it comes through all costs are met by West Suffolk. So I've ascertained that even though the zone is a building on a lease, that we're still available to apply for this, and that is correct. There are 3 issues that need to be ticked off should you wish to go down that path. Is UK Power Networks connection approval, a structural survey of the roof, and a signing of a lease between Suffolk and the landlord of the zone. So at the moment, the current unit charges are 18.47 pence with an energy company, and if you enter into the West Suffolk scheme, you'll pay roughly between 10 and 12 pence. Obviously, if we say round it up to 12, we'll be dropping the spend by just about a third. I did try and put together a little bit of a comparison between all the 3 schemes, but I struggled with putting it together, and I had a few issues with ascertaining exactly what was what. It felt sometimes a bit like apples and oranges. I think the discussion would be, would council prefer to follow through a path of paying? For example, the quotes that I received from the other 2 were for 2 systems. One was for just under £20,000 and one just under £40,000. Obviously, there's upfront costs. Both schemes looking to pay for themselves within 7 years. This particular scheme, to be clear, there's nothing up front. They arrive, they plug it in, and away you go, and it would generate roughly 2/3 of the energy, the electricity for that particular building. Obviously, if my advice would be, from my perspective, as I was struggling a bit with the terminology of how these companies break everything down, some of the jargon about particular units, would be maybe to take some professional advice from someone in the energy business, like Miles, for example, to ascertain exactly if that was a particular system that was proficient enough, and we weren't being sold a bit of a system that was outdated, as I certainly couldn't say that one was better than the other. So if we wish to go down those kind of upfront costs with a view to reclaim them over the course of 7 years, my advice would be to have somebody come back to us and give us their opinion vis-a-vis of those schemes. After speaking to West Suffolk, I've asked for the paperwork to be sent over so I can have a look to see how we started this procedure. It hasn't come through yet, but I'm chasing them up this week. So kind of that's where we're sitting. Two schemes. All schemes are very similar in nature. One scheme, obviously, with no costs up front.
Thanks for that, Gary. Laura, see you got your hand up.
Yeah, am I muted? No, I'm not muted. Good. Yeah, so I may be not understanding, but to me it seems like a no-brainer to go with the one that doesn't have any upfront costs and will be, all the return as profit. But I'm happy, Gary, if you want to send me everything you've got, I'm happy to just send it on to Miles and sort of give him a call to sort of encourage him to have a look quickly and get back to us just to make sure. But I would say that as long as we don't get advised by him, like you said, that it's an outdated, or there's some other sort of pitfall that we can't see, then I would think it seems to be a no-brainer to go for the West Suffolk one myself.
I mean,
if other councillors agree,
some of the description of the systems being installed, I didn't have any experience of those systems either. So my take on it would be to have an opinion of Miles that they're probably all absolutely up to date and very modern. Sure, it's absolutely fine. I just was curious about the discrepancy, one being 20 grand difference between the two. So I just wanted a professional opinion on that. As you say, my own take on it, as yours, is probably, is it better to go with the system with no upfront cost?
Yeah.
I mean,
Laura?
so if other councillors agree, I would say that I would propose that we sort of, send it to Miles, see what he says, make a decision. The only problem with that is that if we're waiting until the next meeting of this group, that delays everything. So I wonder whether we could call a sort of an extraordinary meeting, say in a week or something, for just that one point, just to sort of, have a vote on this once we've got that information from Miles.
To be fair, I think it'd have to go to full council anyway for decision, because obviously we can't vote on anything here. I mean, my one point that I'd like to make is I don't see what the landlord, why would the landlord allow us to do it other than, for the benefit of all? Is there any incentive for our landlord? I don't know. That's something that I'd like to know. I mean, if there isn't any incentive for him, I don't see why he would let that happen, but I don't know. John?
Yeah, I mean, this is the one I recommended. We've been there, done it with my gym. It's nothing new. They've done it on loads of buildings around town. It's on top of the Chalkstone Community Centre. It's on top of Nine Jars. It's on top of the Leisure Centre. It's all kinds of places. It's exactly the same system that's going on in the Mildenhall Hub and everything else. We, on my thing, we got 92 panels, as I mentioned before. It absolutely cost us zero to do it, and we actually get we pay about I think it's about 8 point something pence per unit, considering we had this done 2 years ago. On a nice sunny day, it generates between 7 and 9 kilowatt per hour. We've got it on both sides of the roof, but the one roof actually faces north, so it probably doesn't get a lot in terms of that. You can have battery backup if you want to. We haven't, but you could do. You get an app that tells you how much it's generating and all this sort of stuff. Our bills have gone down by 2/3 because of it. The landlord signed it off. West Suffolk deal with everything. You don't get involved at all as a tenant. They do it all from the benefit. The landlord gets no financial incentive out of it, other than the fact is he keeps their tenants there. Everything was installed by West Suffolk very cleanly. There's a big box on the outside of the building which has got all the gubbins in it. And this is one thing I certainly, what I'd be doing actually is getting the guy from West Suffolk to come down and talk to Gary. That's what he did to us. He came down and explained everything. We obviously looked at other alternative sources, realised that why should we be paying a lot of money for the benefit of a landlord if we suddenly moved out next week? The landlord gets the benefit if we suddenly did shut the zone down and moved elsewhere. He would obviously get the benefit from it. So I would agree with Laura. We need to, as far as I'm concerned, we ought to go ahead with it. It's a no-brainer. There's no outgoings at all, but we gain the income from the difference between what we're paying and what we're, as you say, that 12 to 18 pence differential. Thank you.
Yeah. I think Colin first, then Alan.
Oh, thank you. To be fair, Councillor Burns has pretty well said it in terms of the benefits the landlord should see. And this is year 3, so there is a break clause.
So, and I was just going to say, if you wanted to have a look at one, go up the gym because we got one.
Okay, thanks, John. Alan.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, though, with the West Suffolk deal, do we actually benefit less from the electricity generated than if we had actually paid for our own installation? Presumably, there is a bit of a trade-off there somewhere.
Yeah. I definitely think so, somewhere along that. And the other thing, what's the actual solar panel life? About 20, 25 years, are they?
25 years.
Yeah.
So can I just say, there's very little in the way of money that you get back now from having solar panels, other than the fact that you're generating your own electricity. There's virtually no feedback if at all. The deal that West Suffolk have done, whoever they've done the deal with, obviously covers umpteen buildings, so they've obviously got some sort of deal going.
So it looks like we've got a proposal then from John, seconded by
sorry, Laura did it and I'll second it.
Oh, sorry, Laura.
The other way around.
Yeah, sorry.
My proposal was actually to send everything Gary's got to Miles, just for him to look it over and just give us his sort of professional opinion on whether or not it is the no-brainer that it looks like to us, and then sort of feed that back to the group. Or when is the next full council?
Well, there is a full council penciled in for the 21st of February, but it's a very light agenda, and I have asked the Mayor whether she wants to go ahead with it, as it's in the middle of half term as well, so attendance may not be great. I was wondering, in terms of the speed in which this needs to go to full council, is what's the actual next stage? Do we actually have to commit, or do we have some form of visitation, a survey, and then an actual proper written proposal sent through for us to consider? Because I don't think we've had one of those, have we?
I think the next step would be, if we were going to pursue this, I think one of the 3 points would be the structural survey of the roof. And then if that obviously came back fine, then the commencement would follow. Is that how it happened with you, John?
Yeah,
on that
it's site survey first. Make sure it's not just a structural survey of the roof, but also to look at all the electrics inside. Make sure that where the box will go. Then it was a discussion with the landlord. We were lucky in our case because the landlord happens to be related to one of my business partners, and he was more than happy to go ahead with it. As is most of I think all the buildings that they've done, either council owned or privately owned, and it's a no-brainer. And then finally, obviously the landlord signed something with the West Suffolk, and then West Suffolk come along, tell in our case the tenants that okay, we're going to try and do it this week, and they came along, went up on the roof, installed all those panels, run all the cables and everything, and then probably within the week we were up and running.
Chair, can I suggest then that perhaps if the resolution is in terms of once Miles has had a look at it, if he thinks it's okay, then Gary is forward to the next stages so that we don't go to full council and then have to go back and tell them the roof's not strong enough or something like that. That we actually go back with a deliverable package to ask permission to go with. Yeah.
I think that sounds absolutely spot on. The only thing, one little thing, does Miles work for West Suffolk? Does he or not? No. Okay. You happy with that, Laura?
Yep.
Yeah. John,
I would certainly get that. I can't remember his name. Andrew, was it? From West Suffolk, come down. Yeah. He was very helpful. Yeah, tell you about everything, all those stages and everything. So it might be worthwhile getting him down. Thank you. But yeah, I'm just happy with that as well, Tony.
Yeah. So a show of hands as proposed by Laura. Yeah. Yeah, that's unanimous. Colin, would like to progress that way, please. Good to get that moving. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just on the Big Green Week, just so though it's not got a action against it. There is a sustainable market being held in March 2022. I've got a kind of list here of the people who've signed up to be in it at the moment. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got 10 stalls by the looks of it so far already. So that's coming together quite nicely.
Yeah, that's going to be on the Market Square, I take it.
Well, it's actually be on the High Street.
High Street. Okay.
Have we invited all the people that we tried to invite last time?
Well, that's what Sarah's been working on. So this is 26th of March.
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, we'll be promoting that like anything. Yeah. John?
You're muted.
Pressed it once, pressed it twice. As part of the market review group, one of the things we're encouraging is all these Saturday special markets to actually be part of the main market. So we are encouraging them to be in the high street, as Colin says. So even the makers market, when we restart those, we want them in the high street. Otherwise, they become very disjointed markets. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers, John. Okay, anyone else got anything more to say, Laura?
Yeah, just on that. So I tried really hard for the last one to find sort of entertainers and or like, you know, musicians or things. And obviously we were working on very short notice. We only had a couple of weeks and I didn't have any luck. But I don't know, is Sarah sort of looking at that kind of thing? Because I do think it'll make a big difference. I think the more you have sort of things other than just sales stalls, I think that really brings people in and gets them to stick around and it creates an atmosphere. So yeah, I think it would be a really great thing if we could try and get a bit of a sort of vibe to the event.
Yeah, we've got some separate funding we can use for that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah. Okay, can we just progress with that, Colin?
Yep. Okay. Alicia will make a note of that and it'll go back to Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, public forum, there's no one here. Update on energy saving and lighting projects. That's another one for Gary.
Over the past couple of years, we've obviously been looking at the energy usage of the building. We did manage to, when we went to Eco-Tricity, to get a heat map of the 2019 usage of the building, energy usage, electricity usage through the building. So I don't know if Colin wants to bring it up. We've done a bit more work on it, having a look at it and going through it day by day, week by week. And we've ascertained what events were on that particular day, that particular session. So it's quite a large, basically the meter is given off half-hourly reports. And as you can see, along the line at the top is the day, which runs across. And on far right, you can see if we had logged a particular event. So across the document, we can see the work we did the last couple of weeks. Alicia has done some excellent work on looking at and tabling up the energy usage. We delved into each of the days and we were able to ascertain that the core demand on electricity usage in the building aligned with the use of the WRVS kitchen here and the show lights. So wherever you see those deep reds, That's a performance-based show which is having use on stage, and or you can see towards the left, more towards the left-hand side, is either a matinee or it's the use of the kitchen, which we was able to ascertain through the diary, which showed us whether we had catering requirements for a particular event. That came up a couple of weeks ago when we were delving deeper into this. I have requested from the energy supplier, Electricity, who is having, this has been going on for a while now, having troubles getting the information heat map for 20 and 21, which I think I would like to have a look and see how the building itself has been progressing through lockdown. Obviously, once we have that information, that could further detail where the usage is. Obviously, COVID had of knocking off a few aspects of the power that we're using, and the technical team here have changed have changed a great percentage of the lights in the building. So at this moment, I've further requesting repeatedly back to the energy companies to supply us with this data. And I think as soon as we get that data for 2021, we can then have a look. It's quite an interesting document to delve in, this particular heat map, and you can quite clearly see where, for example, the Panto is in, where centre stage are in, and it's clearly the show lights. So I think there's a discussion to be had maybe with the technical team about if the show lights are presenting a great surge of use in this building, whether or not we can further reduce the footprint by utilising more sustainable lighting up in the rig itself. So that's a conversation I've tried to start with the tech team here. Obviously, if councillors want to have a view at this particular document and any of the further documents, then be happy to show to let everyone see.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. Laura, then John, please.
Yeah, so you know, it being this sort of stage light is something that we've been talking about for a few years, about sort of replacing some of those with LEDs. And I know that Nick and I had a big discussion. I'm not sure if we did it in any if we discussed it in any meetings, but about the fact that there are issues sometimes with the quality of LEDs for certain things. And again, I do feel like I've brought this up before and I can't remember what the answer was, but I think I did quite a lot of research into it, and it transpired that backlights, and I may be getting this the wrong way around, but I don't think I am, that backlights are actually preferred to be LEDs, but the front stage lights thought to have better quality if they're sort of, you know, the old halogen or whatever it is. And I don't know currently whether our stage backlights are LED or not. But if they're not, it seems to be sort of obviously better energy wise, but also even better quality wise to actually replace those with LEDs. So I don't know if anyone knows the answer to what we currently have there, but that may help, may make a dent.
Yeah, I think John may.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been involved with this about 5-6 years, and it was a suggestion I made a long time ago about LEDs. Not that I ever know much about LEDs. The last time I did stage lighting was when I was 13. So I think in those days you had wind up
candles, wasn't it?
Yeah. All right. I know the tech team have replaced quite a lot of lights with LEDs, and you're probably quite right, Laura, in the sense that a lot of the back stuff is now LED. They have been purchasing units, particularly actually second-hand ones, which come from other theatres, things like that, which have been really good. One of the problems that I remember 5-6 years ago being told that, you know, we've had these lights for 25 years and they haven't gone wrong, so why do you want to replace them? But equally, obviously, as we see with this this heat map, which I think has been a brilliant heat map, and I have seen this several times, Alicia and Colin sent it to me. I think one of the things to show is that, 0900 hours, there is quite a surge in electric. Now, that might be, Colin and co coming in the office, but that's a hell of a jump. that is more likely to be the WRVS kitchen being turned on, ready for the cafe opening at 10 o'clock. So hopefully that that may go away, of course. And it's interesting on some of the shows, and I was chatting to Ben and Dylan about this 3 or 4 weeks ago. After the Panto, when a bit longer than that now, 5-6 weeks ago, after the Panto came out at the end of just after Christmas, is that when you look at a show like the Panto, and if you look at like the one you're seeing there now, which is in the middle of the professional Panto from 2 years ago, it's quite interesting how much energy is used in amongst those times, because often the scenes are lit for quite a long period of time. There's very little downtime, if you like. Where if you have a show, which maybe a dance show or something like that, where they tend to have a dance routine, then it all goes black and then it comes on again, several scenes like that. How the difference is, but it also varies, and they're explaining to me about how the as you sort of allude to, Laura, is the different types of lights that are used in a Panto versus perhaps a one-man band coming along and doing a song and dance routine type thing. But it's certainly something I've been pestering for a long time. However, there is a big capital outlay. I believe a decent LED light, which you can use as a spot, I believe at the best part £2,500 each. Yeah. We've got quite a few, so we would have to, if we were going to go along that, we would have to do a full technical review of it. But equally, I would like to see, and it was certainly something I asked about in COVID. We had freezers running. It's a shame we haven't got the 2021 figures. We had freezers running with virtually no food in them, probably running 4 or 5 kilowatt freezers in the WRVS kitchen. Those cookers in there, the ovens in there are massive things. I expect they're 5 or 6 kilowatt minimum ovens, probably higher than that. So I think that's, if you're looking for saving money, I think that's possibly where we're going to do things. There is the other argument is if you're using a lot of energy, let's say on that Panto as an example, there is, do we up our higher rates because we've got a big electricity bill to pay? There's another argument on that. So I'll shut up now.
The other argument is where you've got the heat there is it looks like you've got lots of people in there. So,
Yeah, no, the
RCM is doing its job.
That's right.
People in and that's it. So.
And that year, Tony, 2 years ago, we had probably 85% occupancy for the Panto.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to see what it was end of last year.
I was looking at some of those events there, and they're all very popular events. So in a way, that's great that we had it isn't great that we're using that amount of energy, but we're also doing our job. We're providing entertainment for the town. So we could have a quarter of the heat and no one in here, but it's not really doing anything. Sorry, Laura.
Just what John said about sort of increasing the ticket prices. Obviously, that wouldn't do anything to help the environment, which is what we're here for, unless we used any sort of profit we had for carbon offsetting. But obviously, then we're still operating at a loss. So I don't think it's really a solution. I think it would make more sense to do whatever we can to actually reduce the energy usage of those lights in the shows. I mean, I'm not a lighting technician, so for me, my response would be replace them all with LEDs, and the environment is more important than the quality of lighting. But I'm sure the people whose life that is would probably not feel the same way. So but I don't think increasing ticket prices is really a solution.
There's got to be a compromise, so that we get the best energy efficient to provide the best show that we can. Yeah, John?
Yeah, I was just going to carry on with that. So, if you look at Christmas Day 2 years ago, we were using during the day when the building shut down. I know we got emergency lights and obviously things running, but we were using 5 kilowatt an hour. That's virtually two kettles running constantly for 24 hours in the building. Most of the things were off, but of course the freezers were running.
Yeah.
So there is an explanation for it, but you don't know what you do. How do you solve that? That would save a little bit. So I don't know.
Can I just?
I was going to say that one of the things we've been looking at is the WRVS kitchen. I've asked Dylan to fit a thermostat to the controls for the vents, because we have the freezers on, of course, but at times it's been like a gale blowing through there because of the amount of air conditioning, if you like, ventilation running in there. So I've asked that that's be looked at, so that only actually runs when the room reaches a temperature where it needs to run, because the room's freezing cold and the freezers are still going full pelt. And I think John is actually right to point out that that's the base load. That's basically as low as it gets, which is mad. And without affecting anything we do in terms of delivery, we should be able to get that base load down to lower than that. It may take some investment in equipment, etc. And I just wanted to highlight the Civic Carol service, which took place on the 11th of December. There's bright red. This rivals the anything that you're seeing for the lighting on the Panto. That is the WRVS kitchen preparing sausage rolls for the Civic Carol service. That 25 kilowatts should be enough to fire a sausage roll into orbit, quite frankly. There's no reason. So those ovens were installed for mass production of Meals on Wheels. And I think that we need to look sensibly at what we actually need when we're going forward for catering purposes, of how often we really need those ovens going. And from what I've seen of the cooking going on there, they are so vicious that actually it takes some skill. I know they bake cakes in there to actually get those cakes. They don't have cook fast, but they they have to be alert so they don't just cremate the things instead.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just say,
Gary? Yeah.
I have spent quite a lot of percentage of 2021 requesting the heat map for 20, obviously, as we go into COVID, and between the supplier and the power company, it's been batted backwards and forwards. So just to flag, I am chasing this up because I think seeing a heat map for 20 and now possibly 21, if they've got that information available, I think would also flag a few other things, as council has mooted, that it may be clearer, much clearer as well, if you can see more data. So the more data we get, the better chances we have of controlling the electric in this building. So just to be clear, I am still chasing the 20 and 21 heat maps. And as soon as I've got further news on that, I'll bring that to the next meeting. Yeah, thanks, Gary. John?
Yeah, I was going to say, Gary, I mean, I'm not being overly impressed with Ecotricity, what they're called. Apart from anything, they loaded us up with all kinds of extra add-ons to the quoted price they gave us. But I'd be really interested. I don't know if you just scroll down a little bit, Colin. I can't. It's interesting. Don't go too far. That's it. I was going to say, this is something I noticed the other day, is Treasure Island is centre stages Panto. And it's interesting how they use less electric. Primarily, as I was pointing out a minute ago, they tend to have a lot of scenery changes. So they go blackouts for 5-10 minutes. But it's a shame that we haven't got the latest one because of the fact, of course, all the LED lighting work that's gone on by Ben and Dylan. I know it's not going to change a lot, but it would be nice to have seen a little bit of a drop. Certainly.
I think prior to coming over to Eco, they were very good and very efficient in getting information across. But of course, once we got into the contract, we then just became another one of their thousands of contracts. And batting things back between Western Power and the meter operator and Eco has sometimes been quite a challenge. I found it really quite difficult getting blood out of the stone in terms of information. We've requested some technical changes to the meter so we can read the data better, and it has been batted backwards and forwards, not to our satisfaction. So certainly, as we enter into this very difficult phase for the energy supply, as we all know, it may well be that the energy companies have got their eye on something else, i.e. surviving, rather than supplying us with kind of information. So that bit is quite unfortunate, but I do agree with John's statement that, funnily enough, when I went through all the, every single bill from Ecotricity, and I logged every single bill against every single bill going back for a year or so with the previous supplier, and my expectation that we were going to be massively higher with Ecotricity because of all these sudden the loaded add-ons. However, when I actually looked at it, it came out that actually it was roughly in the same ballpark figure of what we were expecting, and that the add-ons seemed to be some kind of red herring that threw me slightly, and I was quite surprised that we knew. I think we were going to be going to pay slightly more for a green energy supplier tariff, but actually it wasn't that much more than what we were paying before. So that surprised me a little, because I wasn't happy with the fact that they had these add-ons that suddenly appeared, and they said, well, you needed to double check the T&Cs and so on, which I felt was slightly disingenuous, and I made my feelings known to them regarding that. And at the end of I can certainly show detailed spreadsheet that I made to anyone here. I was quite surprised that actually the expectation was it was in the ballpark figure of where we expected to be. It was slightly lower, but obviously it was slightly lower because of COVID and the fact that we'd had fewer shows on. But again, if there's a negative to Ecotricity, it's been the response to requests post taking on the contract.
John?
Can I just, I wonder if it's worth our while, and I don't want to usurp yourself, Gary, is whether we ought to make this a bit more formal to Ecotricity and say, look, we want this data. We pay a lot of money every month for a meter that is supposed to be all electronic, all singing, all dancing. Why are you not giving us this information?
Yeah, absolutely.
You should get it every month, really.
Yeah, I've got to the point now where I'm fed up of being batted between. So I agree. I will take that to the next stage, because I appreciate that there have been concerns the last few months that they've actually got their eye on something else. But right now, I think as a obviously potential supplier going on for the next years and years and years, that really it shouldn't be that difficult to get us that heat map when it wasn't that difficult for them to present this one in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. And to be fair, the problems they've got in the energy market, unfortunately their problems, not ours. We signed up because we wanted this information, and we should have it. As simple as that. Unfortunately, for them, they've got to supply it. That's the reason we went with them. So actions, and Gary, you'll chase up with Ecotricity.
I'll take that towards the top of my list and chase them up on that, because I think the key thing here, looking back at the map and looking at some of the work that Alicia's done, is data. Yeah. So the more data we can have, the better we can look at the usage in the building and make decisions accordingly. Yeah, and thanks to Alicia for all your time that you've spent on doing that. That's really helpful. Thank you. Other actions from that, we'll just go over the lighting situation and look to see how many LEDs we've got proposing to get, etc., etc. John? I'm going to formally suggest, and I think they've done it in the past, but never really got very far. Yeah. I wonder whether when Ben and Dylan have finished all their other projects, whether it's possible that Colin and whoever eventually takes over the Arts Centre manager job, maybe ask them to formally come up with a proposal of not only how much it's going to cost, but potential payback. And it's not only monetary terms, it's something I brought up many times, is the fact that, if they're lighting a show, they have to climb a ladder, the same ladder, often 20 or 30 times, depends on the director, if they have to change the colour gel from one shade of blue to another. LED is just press a button on a console and it's done.
So it's not only in monetary terms. I think it's the health and safety side of things. It's all that sort of side of things. Is that something, Colin, that you would think about?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything more on that before we move on to the next item?
Gary, you had another graph. Did you want to show that, or have you covered it?
That's fine. I think.
Okay, we'll move on to the review of the action plan attached. But for some reason, I've got the budget for the community orchard attached. So I don't know.
Do you want me to show it on screen?
Yes, please, Colin.
Hopefully, I'm trying to make that a bit bigger.
It was a supplied document, wasn't it? Not it was an email attachment, not an attachment to the agenda.
Oh, right. Okay.
Okay. Do you want me to run through it?
Yeah, if you could, please, Colin.
There's two aims. One is for the council and community trust to become carbon neutral, and the other is for Haverhill to become carbon neutral. So the action plan was to integrate environmental considerations into council operational decisions and adopt green alternatives where available. So we certainly are doing that, although we haven't actually done the training other than what we've all picked up from learning about saving, the saving energy and becoming more sustainable in the discussions we've had here, documents such as the one that Councillor Stinchcombe produced recently on green electricity and other items, heat pumps, etc. So I think we've all learned quite a lot, but I haven't actually put together any actual specific training. So I don't know whether that's something we still feel would be useful.
Laura, Alan, any comments, or John? Laura?
Muted, Laura.
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's something that's probably definitely a good idea, because it's a focus that could easily slip out of people's minds. And I think the more information people have, the better. But also, I think things like training are a helpful reminder about how important it is and what people's focus needs to be. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely still sort of keen on getting that going ahead. I think it would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. John?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, I'm a great advocate of train the trainers. So we get somebody trained up in the council, whoever it may be, and then they do the training for the others. Not only does it cut costs of having to keep using external things as well, and some of this, a lot of it's going to be quite common sense as well. So, peer-to-peer training is something I've always done in work ethics. It makes life ever so much easier, because apart from anything, you're actually training someone based on your knowledge of what is actually happening in your environment, not somebody coming from elsewhere who doesn't really know what you're doing. That's my only thought on that. But yeah, I agree. Conceptually, I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So reduction of the carbon footprint by reducing energy consumption. Well, we just been talking about the fact that we're trying to do that. There's been a great deal of work done on replacing the old lighting with LEDs, etc. And hopefully that will be begin to show in the figures in terms of what difference it actually makes. And we are looking at things like the where we're seeing what appears to be high use of electricity, how we can better control that, such as what I was mentioning about fitting thermostats, etc. The new lighting, of course, both at the zone and at the Arts Centre, is not just LED. It also switches itself off if it doesn't detect any movement, etc. And I certainly know that's working. I see that when you're sitting in an office and the lights go off, wave a hand to get them going again.
Yeah, Thanks. I just wondered if, instead of looking at it for a cost basis, it's an actual energy basis, and so that every month or every 3 months we have all the council buildings, how much energy we've actually used. The cost is going to fluctuate, and it has done over the last few months and a couple of years anyway. So I think the good measure would be the actual kilowatt hours we use per quarter. Gary?
I was just going to say that one of the pieces of work that I'd like to commence is exactly that we can, on my job list, is a tracker for that very purpose of tracking every month how much we can, in terms of offsetting, so that will feed into ultimately the 2025 goal of being carbon neutral. But the way that we're going to show this is by tracking. So that we need. Part of our job, my job, is to set this up so we can track all of these energy solutions that we're coming up with, and that we can set up a tracker. So, for example, if we have an administrator post who can be fed the figures from different perspectives, from different buildings, different departments, different staff functions, i.e. the offset of driving and so on and so on. And that tracker, if we can set that up, it would just simply be a means of keying the figures in and letting the spreadsheet do its thing. Obviously, it's easier said than done building such a document, but that certainly, I think, is something we look forward to kind of doing the next 6 months or so and setting that up.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. John?
Yeah, I mean, I think I showed on the art centre thermal diagram or heat diagram, is that it's all kilowatts. That's not money. Money is irrelevant in the scheme of things. You don't have a lot of control over it. If you're paying X pence per kilowatt, that's what you're going to pay. And I think the good example is the one that you and I spoke about, Gary, up at the Zone, about where figures were being taken as kilowatt hours, and then all of a sudden there was apparently a massive increase of over 200% in energy usage in 1 month. But in fact, it wasn't. It was because the energy company had caught up with the figures. And in fact, it was actually only a 49% increase, which come October, you're not surprised when, the expensive boiler kicks in up the Zone with oil and everything. So I think it's very important that at a minimum, we're tracking all the energy uses for each of the building in terms of kilowatts, because that's a very good trend. Okay, it's not as good as every half an hour, but equally, I think we ought to, at the Zone, if we're going to, keep hold of the building, is we really ought to get a proper meter put up there that can be ready every half an hour, because we could do exactly the same analysis as you've done for the Arts Centre there. What happens when the oven goes on at the Zone, for example. I'm not saying it's a heavy duty one, but you know what I mean. Thank you.
Yeah, Alicia's just revealed that we do actually get the figures monthly for the Arts Centre and the Zone, so that's hopefully some stuff for you, Gary, to work with.
Yep,
brilliant.
We did have that other graph, Gary, which is precisely what people are talking about.
Right.
Do you want me to? I can just quickly flick to that.
Yeah, when I was talking about tracker, I'm thinking of a spreadsheet which details, I think John mentioned, across the board. So all the buildings, all how the council uses energy in any way, shape or form, which dovetails into this kind of information you can see in the buildings, but it would be a one-stop shop. Once the figures are in, just let the document compute it up itself. So this is here, you can see the two lockdowns. This is 20 and across into 21. You can quite clearly see on this kilowatt use is in the middle there. It drops right down, goes up and then comes down again. So as I say, data I think is the way forward.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be skewed by the lockdowns. Hopefully we've seen the last of lockdowns, cross fingers and toes. So really now we can just hopefully start building up a data set, and it'd be great to see what trends over the next couple of 3 years, hopefully downwards. Obviously we get into the laws of diminishing returns, etc., but it'd be interesting to see how it goes.
Can I just ask, is this that particular graph, is that total across the 3 buildings,
No, it's just the art centre.
That's the art centre. That's fine. That's okay. It's all right. I thought that was across the 3 buildings. That's fine.
Yeah. Right,
I think what the heat map has particularly helped with, so when we looked at the data that we were able to get from the supplier, the first question we had was, what is this actually telling us? Because it wasn't particularly obvious to begin with what we were seeing. And making sure we can interpret the data is going to be absolutely key.
Yeah. Thanks, Colin.
Okay.
Next,
So that's all the reduction of the carbon footprint. Then there is about reducing the carbon footprint and improve resilience by reducing reliance on carbon-based fuel. Obviously, we have been trying to bid for funding to make changes to how our buildings are heated. I don't know when there's going to be a third round. I haven't heard anything. I don't know whether Gary or Laura have heard anything of future rounds.
No.
I haven't heard anything, but I have asked Miles to let me know when something is coming, so I will remind him to make sure he is going to do that.
Yeah. So Ian Gallin is open to the idea of a joint bid in any case. So it might be that by building something together, we can get something more attractive. And of course, we weren't able to pay Miles, but of course, West Suffolk do have paid professionals who may be able to help as well. We've changed to the green electricity provider. And we look.
Can we have a quick one, John?
Yeah, sorry, Colin. What happened to the proposal to take with Provincial House?
The district heating system.
Because that's already been done, I believe. Councillor Lucrini might know.
It didn't work. It didn't work. The bid wasn't successful.
No, is that what you're talking about? The Salix one?
They were looking for a Salix bid.
That's right.
They couldn't put it together.
No, I think they've replaced the heating system, haven't they?
I've no idea what they've done. They would have had to crack on and do something as far as heating there's concerned. But their proposal for a heating system, they couldn't make financially viable.
No, okay. I think they've done it because it's all part of the new windows and solar panels and everything. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a district heating system.
No, that's fine.
So in terms of the vehicles, obviously we're keeping a second-hand vehicle for longer. It only does very small amounts of mileage, and so it's still in reasonable condition. It will come a point when it really will need to be changed, but clearly getting the most use out of a vehicle is a useful thing to do. We have been following this process of getting battery-powered ground maintenance tools. We're following what Saffron Walden has done, so we're getting electric tools that have been proven to be good quality and last well. And certainly in terms of talking to other councils using the same brand as well. Seems to be okay. We don't have a huge demand for using these things, but we don't use petrol models now. And the electric bikes, we haven't done anything with this one, although I appreciate Councillor Burns has provided the funding. There is a bit of a price hike on those at the moment because they're suffering the same shortages of the computer chips that car manufacturers are experiencing. So some bikes have gone up temporarily in price whilst supply is outstripped by demand. I think what we'll need to do, Gary, is have a conversation about how people feel about using electric bikes, etc. Now we're all back because clearly nipping up to the Leyston Centre at the moment, it's a car, and it'd be far better if we can go by bike. Councillor Burns,
Sorry,
Chair.
sorry, I'm being a pain.
We're used to it.
I know, yeah. I know one of the, as you just mentioned, the Leiston Centre, either going up there to do something or, to, I don't know, open the doors or turn on the timer on the boiler or whatever it might be. I really think, and I do wonder whether we maybe I don't know whether we'd be able to use this money for that, is whether I've mentioned it before about electronic locks. What about a remote control for the timer for the boiler? Those sort of things that will then remove the requirement for anybody to actually go up the Leiston by vehicle or bike, which would help this proposal.
Well, one of the things we need to look at is get the windows done at the Leiston, and also I think that there has been a meeting about the being able to give users a code to get in. I know we had a discussion about that this morning, Gary.
Yeah, well, when we're talking about a code, we're talking about one of those new units that would go on the door when we're doing the replacing the doors and the windows. That will get a modern unit on, which requires as a digi panel where people can input a code, thus circumnavigating the need for someone to take a key. That was the kind of the conversation that we were following through, which obviously we've got some quotes in for those particular units.
Yeah, I mean, it's worked extremely well at my gym, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend that supplier, but it saved tons of stuff up there. We've given users key fobs, but I've got a code that I can get in the building with without having to use a key or anything.
Is it possible to actually have some sort of system where you get a one-time code?
Yes, you can have it a time, the day, right. A repeating one if you like. If you use it every week or whatever, all that stuff, and you can remote do it as well. You get apps if somebody goes in, is in the building and hasn't exited within the reasonable time. You get told on on your phone or whatever.
Wow. Okay. Sure. Thanks, Sean. Colin.
Okay, so then going on the town side of things, obviously we were lucky enough to have Saffron Owen do some work for us, which is very useful. She's still keeping an eye out for things. You may have seen her photograph in the paper with the tree wardens who were busy planting some trees in northeast Haverhill, and they managed to get themselves on the 2 pages of the local news, and it was great to see them out there planting some trees, and they'd also planted some trees up at a school, so it was good to see the tree wardens doing that. So in terms of the community group, this is Sustainable Haverhill. So the tree wardens is the only bit that's kind of come out of that the other side, but it's a start, and hopefully we can begin to grow support for the Sustainable Haverhill through that. They will be, I think, next weekend, the 19th. Yeah, they're going to be up at the Chalkston open space, digging in the soil improver in readiness for delivery of the community orchard trees. So they are busy doing bits and bobs, but it'd be nice to be able to build on that to get some more of the work that we wanted to do being done. We've got the thermal camera, and it'd be good to perhaps stage some events, etc., with that to get some newspaper coverage, so that we can show that it's available and see if that kind of tweaks any interest of people wanting to get involved with that. It all kind of relies on us making sure the volunteer centre builds up its activity and is able to recruit people to these, advertise these sorts of opportunities and recruit to it. So it's all a matter of trying to make it all glue together. The baseline carbon footprint for Haverhill, we've agreed through the council a budget to do that, and that work starts in April. Sorry, Councillor Miller.
Yeah, just on the sort of community stuff. I know we've talked about sort of starting some kind of green community forum where it's sort of something a bit like, like a bit similar to this sort of thing, but, with members of the community to sort of share ideas and sort of have meetings. And I just wondered if it was worth thinking about kicking something like that off. And if so, maybe when we're at the sustainable market, perhaps we could sort of have a sort of sign up sheet where we take contact details for people to sort of get them into a meeting to introduce themselves to each other and sort of try and start a little kind of community environmental group, perhaps.
Yeah, we talked about trying to think of a transition town or sustainable Haverhill was obviously the line we've gone with, and it's what they. I suppose it's making sure we have the answer to the question. Well, what do we actually do? But I agree with you 100%. I'm sure if we can get a small group of people chatting away like that, then we can perhaps begin to see that grow as people join a kind of online Facebook or wherever it might be type group.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth putting some effort back into engaging and getting people back on, because obviously there was quite a bit of momentum a few months ago, but then obviously COVID came along again, lockdown, etc. So just really hopefully can try and get something going again and keep it going.
Yeah. So things like mass tree planting, etc., would be good.
Yeah.
If we also need to find somewhere to plant trees.
Yeah.
So that's the carbon footprint. So that's kind of, it's not done, but it's kind of banked in terms of we know how it's going to get done. And we also haven't had any take up on the idea of a sustainable company such as Freeco. People wanting to get involved. That's basically would be a bit like the work that West Suffolk are doing for the roof of public buildings, is people investing in sustainable energy production. Freeco basically puts solar panels on private roofs, and people invest in that company and get dividends from it, and the community get dividends as well. So all we can continue to do is push stuff forwards into the public realm and keep encouraging that sort of activity. So that is that list. So it's whether or not we feel that that this covers it and we've still got work to do, or whether or not there's anything new come along that we ought to be doing. Bear in mind capacity.
Laura.
You're muted.
Laura.
Sorry. Yeah, it's nothing new, and I know I've said this before, but a thing that always comes back to my mind is the whole kind of sustainable procurement side of things. And I think I use the word procurement wrongly, because I'm not actually talking about things that go through a procurement process. I mean little things like purchases that the council's making, that the cafes are making, things like that, I don't know, cleaning products, whatever it is, things just like sort of consumables and otherwise that the council are purchasing on a regular basis, paper, things like that, making sure that those things are sustainably sourced, recycled where possible, or that kind of thing. I'm not sure sort of if there's anything about that we've kind of got as like a firm kind of policy or action plan or thing. I know I bring it up a lot, and
we have a policy,
where we are with that,
which is the next item. They say so that is where that appears, certainly. And as it's council policy, it is one of the things we talk about in terms of, is this green, is this local?
Yeah. I mean, I know that's in the policy that we wrote. What I more meant is whether it's something that's actually being kind of actioned on a sort of, monthly, weekly basis, whatever, I mean, are the staff who are responsible for sort of making purchases following some sort of procedure to make sure they are checking those purchases to make sure they are sustainable?
Well, as much as we can, and councillors who are check signatures will know that that kind of challenge of sustainability comes up all the time. I have to say that it's, and you won't be surprised to hear it, it's significantly easier to say than it is to do. So, when we buy stuff from a local provider, and we realise that almost certainly it's being shipped from the same Chinese factory as it would if we'd bought it from a company 100 miles away. So hopefully we save a little bit on the lorry that brings things to us. But yeah, I think we are doing the best we can, but I think it's a fair point to always keep raising it because, we need to be on the lookout for any alternatives where we can reduce our own footprint like that.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Colin, on that one. So on that note, I think we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to review our sustainability policy, which neatly segues into that. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you propose doing that? I suspect
councillors.
I can do if that's what councillors want me to do. Yeah, I'll just find it.
Yeah.
How do you want to do this?
I don't know whether shall we quickly try and go through the relevant points on there, or if anyone's just got any points that they would like to bring up now, you go through those. What do you suggest, Colin?
Well, I would have thought that's just if any councillors think there's any amendments that need doing. I mean, the policy is a year old, so and obviously we have had COVID, so the chances are that there's probably not a huge amount of change needed. There was quite a lot of effort put in by councillors to get it reading right the first time, but it's always interesting a year later to reread a document.
Yeah. John?
My own. I had absolutely no problem with the document. As Colin just said, it's only a year ago that we did this. The only thing I perhaps would argue is whether any of these we could have KPIs on them. How well are we doing against those policies? For example, you look in there 3.1. How well, and I'm talking about maybe a statement. How well are we getting towards that 2025 date? Are we on target? Those sort of things. But in terms of the text of the document, I read it a couple of times this morning. I've absolutely no problem from it.
Yeah,
we haven't drawn a path, if you like, in terms of the angle of reduction in energy. I think at this stage, from previous discussions, we are definitely still in the mapping stage. We're doing the obvious things to reduce our energy use, but what has been interesting in mapping, and Gary mentioned earlier about data driving decisions, is that the WRVS ovens weren't on our radar at all. Just never occurred to us that they would be as shining bright as a full-on show. So I think we're going to find things like that. So the actual reduction in our footprint is going to be kind of iterative as we discover what things are actually creating the footprint in the first place. What I suppose we ought to think about is the carbon offsetting to come in the other direction.
Alan?
Thank you, Chair. Am I right in thinking, though, that if we are with a, and pardon my scepticism, I'm going to do air quotes here, genuinely green ecotricity contract, really all the electricity we use is genuinely green, isn't it? Is genuinely carbon neutral. Well, sorry, strictly speaking, there is a carbon cost even in generating renewable electricity, isn't there? Because all the components that go into it, but that it must be surely a tiny bit of a trace of carbon footprint compared with all the other, purchasing activities and other activities that don't involve electricity. Or have I not understood that?
No, I agree with you, but there is, of course, I suppose the argument is that using the same amount of electricity, but getting it from green suppliers is probably not quite what is intended in terms of reducing our footprint. We should be reducing our footprint so that we are not hogging all the electricity that we're either generating ourselves and not feeding any into the national grid. So I think if we can reduce our energy usage, then in terms of, obviously there's gas, there's the actual carbon involved in the production of the things that we consume. So all of those things will rely on us eventually getting to a point where we are offsetting a lot of the carbon that we use, and we'll get to that quickest if we reduce our actual electricity anyway. Because if we can halve our electricity and still source it all from the from renewables, then we could argue that half of what we've saved is an offset to what we can't help but use.
Yeah, Alan.
Thank you. I'm just wondering to what extent carbon economics, the accountancy behind, what is the carbon cost of a biro, or what is the carbon cost of, I don't know, all the other non-electrical activities. What's the carbon cost of a new computer? Surely we can't really know what our carbon footprint is until that economics, that bookkeeping, that process is more evolved than it already is. Because I don't think I bought a PC recently, but it didn't come with a certificate telling me what the carbon cost of it was. I dare say there are estimates lurking around for what it might be, but it also strikes me as an iterative process, because every time someone better estimates what the carbon cost of their products is, everyone else has to go away and recalculate the cost of running their business based on the estimate that you've just come up with. I think it's a ridiculous, a staggeringly complicated process to really work out the carbon cost of anything, starting from where we are.
You can see that Councillor Miller-Jones has a hand up, but just in response to that, as you know, there's different sorts of counting your carbon footprint. So I guess in terms of counting our specific carbon footprint for the council alone, we can probably engineer getting down to carbon neutral by 2025 with some crafty accounting. I think in terms of our wish to not do it by crafty accounting, but actually try and do it for real, then we're kind of looking at the next one out, which is looking at not just what we actually generate in terms of carbon, but in terms of some of the consumption as well. And I think that to avoid greenwashing accusations, I think where we could demonstrate that we have reduced our consumption of energy, we have changed where we get our energy from, and we are conscious, as Councillor Miller-Jones said earlier, that our procurement is endeavouring to buy from laptop manufacturers who've actually said that they've achieved carbon zero. it's kind of zooming out and out and out. And of course, the question is, well, have they done their job properly? But we have to be realistic what we can afford to do. We can't audit other companies.
Laura?
I just wanted to say in response to Alan about the sort of carbon footprint of any sort of item, that I actually have a really good bit of software that I have sort of for my engineering degree, which basically allows you to do that. Obviously, it's not a precise thing. It doesn't allow you to kind of zero down to the specific manufacturer's sort of, process, like the kind of individualities, but you can put in pretty much any sort of anything made of any sort of materials, put in the details, and it will give you a fairly accurate estimate of the sort of cost looked at in various different ways through various different measures. You can kind of see graphs to compare various different materials. It's really useful. So if you ever want to kind of see that in any more detail, then let me know, because it's a really good bit of software.
Yeah, I'll just say something quickly then, John. You've also got to look at, we're moving over towards green energy, which also means that they're having to put a huge amount of extra power infrastructure, cabling in, etc., etc. I've looked at something the other day when there's a huge power supply got to come right the way across Suffolk. Does that get factored in? As we're getting it from a green energy supplier, but actually we've had to dig up half of Suffolk and supply X amount of cabling, etc., etc., etc. Does that come into the figures? I don't know. So whereas a lot of that power would have come down through existing gas pipelines, they're actually having to spend a fortune on cabling and wherever that's made and brought to Suffolk, and either they're hopefully going to try and bury it, but there's a proposed National Grid want to actually have it in pylons. So I don't know. It's all interesting stuff. John?
Yeah, I agree with that. The offshore wind farms may be supposedly so-called green energy, but only when they're generating electricity do they suddenly become green. It's if you look at all the ships and everything else that they installed, where they come from and everything else. But I was going back to this policy because when I read the policy this morning, it reminded me rather of what I would call a controls catalogue. If anyone have ever done controls catalogues in work environment, basically you say these are the gaps I want to minimise, not necessarily fill. And these are the actions I could take to try and do that. But equally, this is what I've actually done to do it. And this is the residual gap. So, if, let's say the contract to buy from energy suppliers, that would be your gap. But what have you done to mitigate it? Well, ecotricity as an example, or your gas supplier. You can't really do much with gas, but you know what I mean. It's looking at alternative things, and I think that might be over the years to come. That might be quite a good bit like a Gantt chart. It's actually showing you the progress as you're making for each of these gaps, so that somebody in the future will say, "Well, what have you actually done?" And there it is, all available. Okay, we did this, and this. We haven't actually been able to do anything about that because whatever. I think that might be quite a useful document over the years to develop. And I'm not saying any of us to be around when it happens, but something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, I think personally the main thing is that there's a huge sea change from what it was 20, 30 years ago. No one really talked so much about green issues, and now a lot of people it's on everyone's mind. So hopefully over the next few years things are gradually going to change. Insulation levels on buildings, which I think is the most important thing out of everything, is they're increased. We get safe insulation, etc., etc. It's designed into future buildings. It's a great document that we've got there. Our sustainability policy, and Colin, everyone that worked on it should be thanked. Yes, it's a really good start. Yeah.
I should mention, just in the sustainable resource management, one of the things that Kevin will be building shortly is a platform so that we can have a second bottle bank, so that we can have clear glass and coloured glass collected separately, because that's, again, it's the glass that's clear. That the more of that's recycled alone, then you can get clear glass out of it again, and that's useful, because at the moment, if it's all mixed together, all the clear glass that goes into a mixed bin is effectively lost. Obviously, green glass is a huge amount of green glass is needed, but clear glass can always become green glass, but it doesn't work the other way around.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else got any other points they'd like to make on the policy at all? No. I think, obviously, is it down that we review it every year or something anyway, Colin? Or?
We review all our policies every year.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. Unless anyone has got any other issues on that, we'll move on to agenda item 10. Which
sorry, Chair. So I didn't hear any actual changes to the policy itself.
To be fair, I think it's a very good policy, and I think you've managed to hit most of the nails, all the nails on the head as far as I can see. And
well, it was all of you that wrote it. It wasn't. Yeah. It was officers may have been doing the typing.
No, but everyone contributed, but it's all come together, well, and I think everyone's happy with it. So yes,
okay,
great start. Yeah,
you polished our nails.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have to formally? We have adopted it anyway, haven't we? So,
well, the council's adopted it. Alicia will simply record in the minutes that it was reviewed and there's no changes required.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, agenda item 10, items for the next meeting. I think Alan submitted some slides, etc., that we'd possibly like to have on the agenda for next meeting. Alan, would you like to elaborate on that, please?
I don't think I've submitted anything new, so much as the ones that the presentation that we looked at, I don't know, a couple of meetings ago, 3 meetings ago. I think you, Chair, had said that you'd quite like to recycle them by sending them on to West Suffolk Council. I'm not quite sure what clientele within West Suffolk Council, but anyway, promote some of the information that was contained, and polish Haverhill's reputation as a place where we think about stuff, possibly along the way. And I think I drafted a possible letter for you. You were talking about drafting your own letter, and then I sent you a draft. I don't know if you've picked that up or run with that or written your own draft, but sort of moving towards authorising you effectively to, or the mayor, via
I think we can do it via the mayor.
I'm not sure quite what route we want to go, but so I don't have anything new.
No,
but you have got my draft that you may wish to use. Or
I think I forwarded it on to you, Colin, didn't I? At some stage, asking you to put that on.
I have to be honest and say that I don't recall any of that conversation you just had. The last thing I remember from Councillor Stinchcombe was the excellent paper on green electricity.
I know. They just keep on coming, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I just think the chair will probably want to record our thanks for you keep producing those, because they're absolutely fascinating documents, and it's a useful digest because you pull everything together. But I'm afraid, in terms of what you're talking about right now, that doesn't ring any bells at all. I apologise.
Right. Well, could we put that on the agenda for the next? Possibly put that on the agenda for the next meeting then, and I'll make sure that I'll go through everything that I've got, and Alan, and we'll get it over to you. And
okay, then I'll work out what it is, and I'll get it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if we think the electricity paper, which had two components to it, didn't it, as well? If we think that's of wider interest, I mean, that could be bundled with the lower carbon. I forget what the title of the previous presentation was. Reducing the carbon content of heating, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah.
If we think it all makes a useful bundle, it could all go together, or not, as people think fit.
Yeah, so that'd be, get the stuff together and we'll discuss it at the next meeting, and hopefully, we can get it off and go forward from there. John?
A couple of things. One is I think we need to try and see whether we can get those heat diagrams by, in a couple of months' time when we have our next meeting. I think that would be really interesting to show what 2021, we could probably write off most of 20, but certainly 21, and compare pantos, as it were, exactly, that sort of thing. And the only other thing I was going to say is, I did start to listen to a budget presentation last night, but then gave up because I've got another one coming up anyway from West Suffolk. And of course, they're going on a lot about the carbon footprint and all this sort of stuff, allocating money and all this sort of stuff. It's making sure that things that they do and things that we do work in harmony, complement each other. Is that as much as I would like to see us do things ourselves, I wouldn't want to do things that they're already going to try and do and maybe don't tell us, because in the last 2 years, as Tony would tell you, and Aaron as well, is we've been very much excluded from a lot of things that are happening at West Suffolk, and it's getting rather annoying. But so those sort of things behind the doors we need to know about, and it might be worthwhile. Whoever it is at West Suffolk who's going to be involved in this is keeping us formally advised of projects they've got going on and all this. It's a bit like next door with Provincial House. They're putting solar panels in, they're putting windows in. Okay, be it government grant, it's still taxpayers' money, whichever way you look at it. What benefit? All they keep saying to us, we're going to save so much CO2, but actually, how much energy are you going to save? How much fuel you're going to save? How much you're going to do this? And can we use those as examples? So that it's not an action thing, but it's just a conscious thing that we need to be aware of. Thank you.
Laura?
Do we not have anyone on the sort of West Suffolk Environmental Committee or whatever it's called?
David Roach, isn't he?
I don't know.
Okay, I mean, if he is, could we sort of semi-formally ask him to please ensure that anything kind of that might be relevant to us, environmental related, that is sort of fed back to us, that we sort of maybe get him to send us a sort of regular email or something? I
think it'd be worthwhile, because as far as I recall, David Roach may even have chaired it, or was definitely on it, unless something's changed. But he's also obviously is on the cabinet as well. So I think we should obviously copy him in on everything we do, and at least he knows what's going on, and possibly use him to our advantage.
Tony, do you think you could maybe send him an email and just sort of ask him if he can please keep us informed?
Yes, I will do. Yeah.
Amazing.
Just to clarify, it's actually a working party rather than it's not a formal committee.
Similar to what we're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're doing it obviously because we're not meeting up, but they're doing it as it will report back probably to Cabinet, I suspect. But I've never really been sent the first report that they made. It's never been really publicised very well to councillors. Certainly, I'm sure it's probably available online somewhere. But I'm always an advocate. You send it to me. I shouldn't have to chase for it. So that's me,
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know whether it'll be something that'll be able to make the next agenda, but there's a meeting of the One Haverhill Partnership Ops Group next week, where we have Andrea Maley, who's from the Economic Development team at West Suffolk, coming along. I've suggested, in terms of the framing of the business plan that we're working up to present to the next board meeting. That an interesting direction to go would be to look at the donut economics as produced by Kate Rayworth. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with that at all, but basically it looks at a wide range of KPIs, if you like, for what might be impacting people. So looking at economic sort of fairness, but also then the impact on the planet as well. And so I've asked if Andrea can come along. So I want to know whether or not West Suffolk has considered doing any work on benchmarking itself using donut economics. I know a few councils have. It's quite complicated work, but what it looks to do is kind of just show, not just in terms of energy, but also in terms of a whole range of variables to how an organisation, how a country, how the world is actually performing in terms of sustainability. So if there is something to report back, if it turns out West Suffolk have looked at that and West Suffolk might be interested in assisting in terms of creating a donut economics graph for Haverhill, then that would certainly be something that this group would want to hear about. But I don't know whether they are yet, so I can't say to put it on the agenda.
No, thank you.
So I've just put it on the chat, the final report from the so-called task force, but I have no idea who was on that task force. Like most working parties. Sorry, Alan, I can't hear you.
If they told you, they'd have to kill you, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I know. It annoys me when you don't know who that, you don't know whether it was politically balanced or whether it was location balanced or what it was, or even experience. The people on it, have they got any experience of working with climate change? No idea.
Well, I remember David Roach was definitely on it at the beginning. I don't know if he still is, but I say we've had no real update.
I put the link there if anyone wants to read it.
Right. Okay. The next thing to discuss is the date of the next meeting. Any suggestions, Colin?
It's down to the meeting, really, in terms of how long should we be leaving it before we next get together. It's usually every couple of months. Yeah.
It really depends on what Miles comes back with, etc. And sorry, Laura. Yeah.
Well, I was just about to say, I think it depends on how long it takes us to get kind of advice from Miles and for Gary to sort of sort out that kind of structural review. I mean, I reckon that what we don't want to be doing is delaying progress simply by the fact that we're waiting for a meeting. So I would say, in a way, it's better to call another meeting sooner and then maybe postpone it if not enough has happened. Than say, a couple of months, and then actually in a much shorter time we could have been ready to have a meeting. So I would propose to have one a bit sooner.
What sort of time frame do you think, Colin, would have?
Well, there's one penciled in for 11th of April, but whether or not that's too far away for people, it's not terribly far away, but it's too far.
I mean, do we have any idea how long it will take, Gary, to get the West Suffolk people to come and sort of do this review?
I think the key thing is, if we can send information, I'll send it to you tomorrow, then maybe give it a week, because I know that Miles is a very busy man. If we give it a week for Miles to come back to us, and then at the same time I can be talking to having a site visit from West Suffolk. So maybe we can convene again in like 3 to 4 weeks, just for the express purpose of delivering the information that we're receiving back, and then we can make a decision driven by the facts in front of us.
So it's sort of mid-March then, really?
Yeah.
And I would also take the opportunity to go and visit my business, in the sense that we've been there, done it. You can ask the questions to get honest answers from them about what they think of it and all this sort of stuff. I mean, I only see the financial results. I don't actually see the benefits.
Yeah.
So the 15th of March.
Yeah.
I don't know whether there's any district meetings.
And not that I haven't got anything in my one.
That's in 5 weeks. Should we say maybe the one before, the 8th?
There's a leisure and community meeting.
Okay.
And there is half term in the middle of all of that anyway. So it is actually 4 working weeks for those who are taking a bit of a break.
Okay. Let's say the 15th of March. If anything, revelationary happens or something, we can, share emails, etc., and hopefully get things moving, because any major decision has got to be ratified by the full council anyway. But if it's just sort of an admin, let's email or share this information, we can do that via emails anyway. So 15th sounds good.
Is there a sort of when will the next council meeting? I know it won't have been confirmed, but the one after the 21st of February, roughly when will that be? The next full council? I
should imagine it will be the 28th of March.
Okay.
29th of March.
Okay. So that'll give us a couple of weeks to kind of, okay.
Oh, it's before the agenda goes out, so there's plenty of time.
Yeah.
So if anything comes in, Colin can just email, or Gary can just email us all on the committee, and we can round robin email, discuss and forward it on that way. It's not going to be anything contentious, I'm sure.
Can Alicia add that to the town council diary for us, calendar for us, just so it appears? Thank you.
Okay. That brings the meeting to a close. Thanks for everyone's time and attendance and input. Great little meeting. Thanks very much, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Cheers, Anne. Ta-da.